This lesson is on defining a PHP function that both receives data and returns data. Now, we've got a form slightly more complicated than what we've seen in the last couple of examples. I got our name, how many hours do I sleep at night, and my birth year. Let's go ahead and put it in. All right, 8 hours, 1956, submit the button. Okay, spent all these years my life sleeping, retirement, you sleep too much. You've seen a program like this before, but now we're going to get this code to be performed with inside a function and much more efficiently. Let's go to the code. First, the HTML form. Here it is, first name, hour slept, birth year, and the submit button. And it calls this PHP program. Let's go to that PHP program. I've defined 3 variables here that are coming back from the HTML form, what the user entered. In first name, hour slept, birth year, in birth year. Now look, I have a do validation function defined somewhere. It's on the right side of an equal sign, so it's going to happen first. So I'm going to look at the first name, hour slept, and birth year. Now let's jump down. Since we're going to kind of play computer here, I'm going to walk through the code as it's being run, if you will. I have down at the bottom of my file now, begin function definitions. So I've separating the function definitions from the rest of the code. Here it is, function, do validation, and here are the variables I've passed. Notice these ones don't have the in underscore in front of them, because again, I'm passing data to the function. I'm not passing variable names. So now, if empty first name, but you must enter a name. If empty hours slept, you must enter hours. If numeric, not numeric. Not is numeric, which is another way of saying if not numeric, all these error messages. And look, instead of printing out these error messages as I've done in the past, I'm building them into an error message variable, $error message, with a concatenation. This basically means append this text to what was already there. And that's why I did this, by the way. At the very top, I initialized error message to be tick, tick, an empty string, because I knew I wanted to do this. And if I started saying append this text to what is already there, and there's nothing there, I'm going to get an error. So these things look familiar. We did some validations before, didn't we? Let's go take a look at the code the way we used to do it. I had to check if empty first name, and then I printed, you must enter a first name, go back, try again, da-da-da-da-da. Then I exited the program, and I had all this code for all these error checking. This is the way we did it before I did it with a function. Okay, so back to this PHP code. So I'm building up all the errors. In fact, we should go get an error. Here, if I leave this thing, I leave out the first name, or I leave out all 3 fields, hit the submit. Now I get, you must enter first name, hours, and I must enter the birth year. Go back and try again. So I get all of it. Last time, I got one message at a time, and then I had to go back, fix that, and then maybe I got another error message. This time I get to see the whole thing at once. And this is because I'm building up these error messages inside this variable. And notice, with each error message, I put a break in front of it so it'll appear on a different line when I go to print it. Now what I do here is I don't print within this function. I return the error message. So let's go back up. I have to go back and see where it was called. It was called here. It gets returned into this thing. Now I called this something very close, return message, but it doesn't have to be the same. So I check to see if it's empty, because if it's empty, I didn't get any error messages. Cool. Remember how I set it up as empty or empty string? I could have used the empty function here as well instead of looking for a empty string. There's multiple ways I could have detected that no errors had occurred, but I did it this way. So note the equals equals, got to use that. So if I didn't get an errors, I display the page with those same variables that I got originally. Same information, first name, hour slept. Let's go down again. Let's start looking at that. What does display page do? Well, display page receives the data, gets the current year, does all these calculations that we did before. This is the same kind of code we had in an earlier program. Checks to see if I'm over 50. tells me to start planning for retirement, that I sleep too much, etc., etc. I just lifted this code from a previous program that we used where we calculated these kinds of things before, but we didn't do the validations in the same way. So let's go back up. Does this return anything? It doesn't look like it does. There is no return statement. So let's go back up and look. So it would do this function and then drop down, and it's essentially done. Because all this code down here, all this function code, remember, it does not happen unless it's called. So everything after this point is just function definitions. So essentially, I'm done with the program. Now, say I had an error message. This failed. This was false. It would come down and it would print those error messages out. Just print got returned from the validation. And then put the statement, go back and try again. So I always say go back and try again if I have an error message. I don't have to repeat that information for each individual error message. So a little bit more complex than we had before, but this is good stuff. And we're leading up to making a more complicated and better real estate application in the upcoming assignments because of it. This ends the lesson on defining a custom PHP function where data is defined as coming in and data is returned out.